Welcome to our third podcast. I call this the second podcast because I don't count the first one, but this is the third podcast of Wired In, where we help you make sense of business technology. We're continuing our discussion about lighting. We're also continuing our discussion with Leon Mowadia from New York, and we've added Timothy Johnson from Dallas. Welcome, everyone, in the room.
Thanks for having me.
And also with us today is Brian Robinson, who does a lot of our analytics and a lot of our social media and all of our cool stuff.
Hello there.
Hey, Brian. So first of all, guys, Leon, we got to know you a little bit in the videos, but Timothy, give me a little bit about kind of what you do and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I started about almost 4.5 years now. I started out as a project development specialist, so I started in my whole career in lighting, started with the solutions team here at FSG. And basically I've been, over the years, I promoted myself, I got promoted to a project development manager position, where essentially I'm in charge of all turnkey projects that come through our team.
So what kind of customers are you working with?
All types, pretty much. We do anyone that's looking for full solutions for material, labor, rebates, which our primary customers are DaVita Healthcare is one of our larger ones. We're doing ACCs, Hyatt. Anything from large warehouses. We've done craft distribution warehouses that are like million square feet to small Taco Cabana sites where it's just a couple hundred 1,000 square feet but there's 20 sites, 50 sites, all the way up to a couple hundred.
Awesome. So a lot of questions. So a lot of these questions came in. There are questions we've heard people ask and kind of questions that came up from the videos and around those topics. One of the questions that we were talking about is, there's savings and value that a project like this brings. And we talked about the savings, but I don't know, Leon, maybe talk a little bit about some of the other places where a project brings value to a project outside of, the hard dollars.
Yeah, maintenance is a little easier because you can take maintenance savings in. You can, if they have people on staff, they're doing the work. If there's something, monthly maintenance, preventative maintenance programs out, that's actually hard numbers that you can start to, also factor in. But then there's HVAC savings because lighting, LED lighting, uses less heat. So there's an equation that we use that the utility actually gives us to be able to say this is what the reduction is, in HVAC savings. And also because you have to heat it more in the winter and cool it more in the summer and things like that, you're able to really kind of manage those a little better. It's a little less stress on your systems when you put in LED. Then there's the intangibles, right? There's things like there's the aesthetics. So you can't manage that. You can't put it as a financial number, but it's definitely an improvement to the area. It could also improve sales. It can improve merchandising and all those kind of things. So yeah, you take all those factors in, and those are other things that you're able to really show that the project has that kind of impact.
A
So
lot of times too, security is actually a big thing.
Say that again, Tim.
Well, I was saying security is also something because there is an improvement in lighting. We've had multiple projects with a lot of times ATM compliance. One of the other areas is we actually have to meet a certain foot candle reading, right? So, that's usually state standards, and we've had like Motel 6 is one of our customers, and if they had a security issue at one of the sites, one of the first things they look at is lighting. Honestly, sometimes it can be too bright, and a lot of times if you got security cameras, actually we've dealt with that recently where the color temperature can affect the sort of the quality of the picture that the security camera gets. So a lot of different things like that. There's just a lot of different variables that have to be taken into account.
Well, what about safety, like in the space? Especially in an industrial space.
We've had to take that into account. Anytime you have, we've done some large distribution warehouses, and the major concern there is, a lot of these places have forklifts that are just, going extremely quickly. So, anytime there's aisles or whatever, you don't want to hit someone. So making sure it's properly lit and that, because some some of the big opportunities for savings in an industrial space like that or warehouses are aux sensors and being able to turn the light off when no one's occupying it. But when you have situations like that, sometimes it's best to have a low level where the light never really shuts off completely, but just reduces the 20%. So they always have, they always see that there's someone that could step in their way.
And the same with manufacturing. Yeah, the same with manufacturing as well. When you have manufacturing facilities, we did a brewery, a large industrial, manufacturing brewery. And what they did was, after we put the new lighting in, it changed the entire cleaning of the area that they had to do, because all of a sudden, all the mold that they didn't know was there was there. So, I think we may have gotten the cleaning company fired. I'm not quite sure about it, but they may have been fired. But it really changed how they had to clean everything, because now there was stuff they didn't even know that they couldn't even see before underneath the tanks, where they thought it was being power washed and cleaned correctly. So it changes the entire, kind of real estate of the area when you do these kind of things. So safety obviously is improved, especially in a manufacturing facility where people's hands and stuff are in these machines. And I know you're picturing Lucy right now, Brent. I know you, with the conveyor belt. So I know you're picturing it. Let's just go there and get it over with.
There's a modern reference. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly right. That didn't age us at all just now. But yeah, it definitely it changes all of that. So really, when you get into the cleaning and all those kind of things, that actually could add, to the cost of the project, because it changes everything. So
well, I know
a little bit of an impact.
No,
it's true.
When you turn the lights on, it's like this place needs some cleaning. Well, and there was a lot of discussion around audits. What is involved in doing an audit? Like, how long does it take? What is involved? Will it disrupt my business? Those kind of questions. Can you kind of walk through the process?
Yeah. In terms of how long it takes, I mean, obviously it's completely dependent on the size of the facility and what type of facility it is. Warehouse is obviously, sometimes a lot easier than a manufacturing plant that's got, these big massive machines everywhere and nooks and crannies and everything. Or for instance, we actually just also audited a hospital, and, a lot of times we look at square footage to try to get an idea about potential, size and length or length of time it takes to actually complete an audit. But for a hospital like that, there's hundreds and hundreds of different rooms where, you have to have someone walking with you the entire time to open up each and every room and closet and all the secure areas. You need an escort. So each type of place obviously it varies wildly. A lot of times though, in terms of how it doesn't interrupt business, we have a minimal effect on that. We're usually just peek our head in, try to get a count, see what's there, and get out of the way, right? We know everyone else is still continuing on their business, and we don't want to interrupt anything that they do.
Are you do you have to shut things down to kind of get up into the lights, especially in a warehouse or an industrial space, or can you usually get it from the ground?
We can usually get it from the ground. It all, sort of depends on who's auditing too. I mean, we've done this enough where if we're auditing a site ourselves, if it's, someone on the solutions team, we can usually tell, given height and I mean, a lot of times we may get up there just to get a picture of the lamp, or we can look at backstock, which is probably the biggest resource, or just talking to the maintenance technician. A lot of times they know exactly what's up there. For someone that's inexperienced, we do usually require them to get photos to, sort of prove that what's there is what they say it is. But I mean, that's obviously a concern just because of how important the audits are.
So if someone gets it, how long should an audit take? I guess the whole process, not just necessarily looking at the buildings, but do you have kind of an idea that you use to determine kind of what the time frame should be?
Yeah, I mean, from like sort of start of beginning to when we're notified about a project, to reach out to a site and get something scheduled. Obviously, it doesn't take too long, and we try to be open when they're available. Once we're on site, whether it's us or one of our technicians, I mean, for the most part, we can usually audit in one full day. If it's a massive million square feet, then that's something obviously, it'll probably be 3 or 4 days. The size makes it completely subjective. But I mean, for the most part, whether it's small or, probably up to, I don't know, 300,000 or 400,000 square feet, we can probably get it in one good day, maybe two.
Well, what about like hospitality where there's people occupying rooms? I think Leon, you were talking about that before. Is it do you need to get into every room, or can you kind of estimate with the rooms, because it's kind of, sometimes they're not going to shut down the hotel to have people come in and look at the lamps.
Yeah, usually what you do is there's different room types. Say there's you see one suite, you take a look at one regular room, different room types, then you could just extrapolate it throughout the facility depending on how many there are. So that way you can only see 3-4 rooms instead of 300-400 rooms.
And what about with schools?
The best time to do a school project is in the summer.
Right.
Because you have access to the facility, you're not interfering with classes or anything like that. So you really want to get everything done prior to everybody getting out of school. So you can schedule it for later in the day, after 2-3 o'clock, you can do the audits. Again, classrooms are a lot alike. So
right.
If there's certain classrooms that you can't get access to, you literally can walk by and peek in 2 seconds, know, it's about the same size kind of thing. And then be able to, figure out if it makes sense.
What should I expect to get back? What kind of document? What kind of resources? What kind of calculations? I mean, is there a report? I mean, is there something standard? I mean, what should I expect back?
Yeah, full return on investment, analysis. So it's everything from payback in months to 10-year positive cash flow analysis. The rebate that's going to be entailed in it, it's going to be included in it.
Okay.
The whole ROI analysis, as well as all the spec sheets and what our scope of the project will be.
Gotcha.
So we're going to replace this with this. We're going to redesign these areas, and these will be the impact. A lot of times, existing pictures are in there as well. So these are what the classrooms look like now, or what the building looks like, whatever kind of facility it is. So that would be the whole proposal that we would then turn over to them.
I've heard different kinds of audits. Some people will say like construction grade audit, or I think that's a term. I don't know. I might have just made it up. But
investment grade audit.
Investment grade audit. That's the term. Can you talk a little bit about the different grades of audit or what that means?
Sure.
Yeah,
Tim, you jump on
Go
that
ahead,
one.
All right. The essentially, I mean, when we're doing an audit, I mean, we try to get the best information we can, no matter the circumstance. A lot of times, though, there are sometimes assumptions that need to be made because of certain circumstances, whether it's just access given to by the customer or certain timelines that we have to meet. It's just enough information to give the customer sort of a top-down view of what their project could look like, try to get the process started. Once they see those numbers and they, hopefully agree with them and they want to move forward with it, then we'll do an investment grade audit where we'll go back, make sure everything is what we said it was, confirm our counts, confirm wattages, burn hours, all those standard stuff. And then that'll be the audit that we move forward with.
Is there a difference between a regular audit and an investment grade audit, or is it just is there something else that's being counted?
No, not necessarily. It's usually just essentially the quality and probably the time spent on site, getting the information and making sure it's correct.
Yeah, exactly. An investment grade audit, I usually look at it as that's the construction project.
Okay.
So a lot of times you may do an audit where you've, again, like we were talking before, you extrapolate the amount of rooms, the amount of classrooms, but then you're going to build the project. You do an investment grade audit to build the project, so you have the quantities right and everything's correct.
Have you run into any rebates or where they're requiring some sort of different process?
Well, with rebates, a lot of times it's not so much the audit process out for that. It's and again, rebates can get a little difficult because every single utility in the country is different, so they all have different requirements. Unfortunately, I'm in Dallas, and that's probably one of the more Encore's the utility, and they have one of the more difficult rebate processes, one of the more stringent in terms of what they require. and even for them, what typically happens is, once we're moving forward with the project, they require their own pre-inspection. So even though we have done an audit and we have said, this is what is at the site, Encore will, and really there's a couple of utilities that do this. They will go out themselves and evaluate the opportunity to confirm everything that we did, for themselves essentially, and make sure it's all right. And nothing is, we're not overstating savings essentially.
Gotcha.
And in terms of the lighting as a service, I don't believe we require anything different for auditing. Sometimes there's some metering that takes place, but in terms of the audit process, it doesn't really change anything.
What is what kind of things have you guys seen in terms of auditing those? I assume we don't audit those differently, but in terms of having a plan for acquiring facilities and having a plan for bringing them into our system and bringing it into kind of connecting it with the rest of the facilities, how was that different depending on the facility's age, where it is in its lifespan?
Yeah, you want to bring in the whole portfolio, right? So if you have, again, let's use a retail chain for a second. If you have different generations of stores, you may have acquired companies and things like that. You want to be able to offer all the, you want to be able to audit all of the different types of facilities so they can get an idea of what the entire project would be. So if you have 100 that were Generation A, 100 that were Generation B, and then you acquired 3 other chains, you want to make sure that there's not just audits in one of the brands or one of the generations. You want to be able to audit across the brands and get an idea of this is what the project would be, because there's going to be different technologies used. There's different fixtures up there now, so you're really going to want to get a handle on the entire project, and that's really the way you would do it. Is you would audit around the country, different areas, to all of these different generations.
And they might be in different states and different rebates and different everything.
Hey, exactly.
So the other question, one of the last things that we had talked about and that we'd heard questions about were around creating quote documents. Tell me about where kind of auditing and piloting and where all this is in that process.
Well, I mean, customers do need, and it is a diligence, side of it to be able to get more than one bid. The only question is who's doing all the work and did they pay for it, up front. So if they want to go out to RFP, but they need somebody to come up with the scope documents, there's going to be a cost to that.
Right.
And then a lot of times you'll say, you don't have to pay for the project if we wound up winning it. So that's where they can kind of offset that cost a little bit. But it's really coming down to, it's not just products anymore, right? So you can always bid out the products,
right? But
bidding out who's gonna do a rollout and who can do this consistently nationally, whatever it is. That's the part that's a little harder to bid out. So they just got to get a comfort level and the right price from who they want to work with.
Didn't that kind of go back to the conversation we were having about products versus projects, and kind of how it's not really a commodity anymore? It's a relationship, right. And it's a solution, right?
Exactly, and it's really what it's the whole scope. It's being able to do everything, including the recycling and the rebate administration, everything in 50 states. That's going to be something that they're going to have to take into consideration. They can always get the pricing to the level that's acceptable, to the return on investment that they're looking for. There's a lot of products out there. There's A, B, and C level products, so they can always get that and get to where the customer wants to be. It's really who can deliver the project, and that's a little harder to put out an RFP. So you pilot, and maybe you choose 3 people that you narrow it down to 3, and then you pilot a couple stores with all 3 with the same products. Gotcha. And you see who delivers the best.
Well, that kind of goes into what are the kinds of things you want to come away from a pilot project with? I mean, what questions do you really want answered with a successful pilot?
So I always go, the first thing you really want to come away with is the aesthetics. What's the project look like? Even from anything, from retail to hospitality to industrial to manufacturing to commercial. That's the number one thing of a project, because LED can look really good and LED can look really bad. So
Right.
you come away with a pilot with it looking like the project that you wanted to implement. So that's the first thing. And then from a data side, it's fairly, it's we talked about it earlier. It's math, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're saving energy. You're saving energy. So the only thing that can help it go astray or make it go astray are operating hours or usage of other things in the facility. Was there a heat wave and the air conditioning was on, a lot
Right.
longer, a lot higher than it normally is? So it's those kind of things because that pilot is going to then be, monitored maybe over 30 days. They're going to look at bills over 30, 60 days and see if it met what they were looking for. Well, those are the variables that could change it. The lighting, you're going from a 90 watt to a 15 watt or 100 watt to a 25 watt, whatever it is. Fluorescence, 32 down to 12. That's just math. So those are the other tangibles that are going to, play into it, as well as operating hours. Did they work a double shift? And that changed everything.
Gotcha.
We had a customer, ask about foot candles, just in the tactical sort of measurement, part of the audit. What are the purpose of foot candle measurements and when are they used in an audit?
A lot of times we use them for, it sort of depends on the situation again, but, for some of the ATM compliance, a lot of times we'll take foot candles just to verify that the existing lighting meets the requirements for what, either ATM code or whatever code that is specific to the situation. Because, when we're doing retrofits, or at least in the retrofit world, what we base our proposed fixture on is a lot of times what's there. So we do foot candle readings to verify that you're actually getting the required output that you need to right now. If you're not, then obviously we need to not base it off what's there, and we need to increase your light output and make sure we can get you to meet code or whatever the standards are.
Got it.
And also, there's IES standards, right? So, all projects need to, especially if there's going to be a rebate involved, need to meet the IES foot candle standard, especially if it's classrooms, things like that. You really want to be careful. You want to make sure you increase the lighting levels and get to the level that you need. So that's where foot candles always come into play as well.
What about in emergency lighting?
Yep, absolutely. There's stairwell requirements, as well, and foot candle requirements and stairwells where, there's a lot of fixtures now that have sensors on them where they'll go down to 50% to save energy in stairwells, but you don't want stairwells to ever not have lighting, especially in New York. That's a major code here. So even when it trips down to the lower level, it still has to be at the acceptable IES foot candle level.
Got it.
So you're still saving energy, but you can't just go and save energy. You really want to. It's a great question. Because you can go down to 2 watts if you want to, but that's really where you have to take into consideration, like you said, things like safety and security and things like that.
I had a question that's probably I'm sure it's unrelated to what we were just talking about, but have you guys, a lot of these products are made in China, and if they're not made in China, a lot of these products the elements are sourced in China. Have you guys started to see any kind of a fallout or any kind of a change in availability or cost or anything because of the kind of the current crisis that's going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what's really happened is, we have construction schedules for customers that are building, 50 to 100 locations over the next year. And now we have to change the forecast. They're not going to change their schedule. So we got to work on the forecast to make sure to stock better, work with the manufacturers on forecasting. And if we have to, get alternate products because it is definitely starting to impact the industry. We were hoping it wasn't going to, but they had major shutdowns and they're just starting to ramp up now. And it's putting everybody, very far behind.
Is it availability? Is it cost? Is it all of the above? Is it just types of products? Are there some types of products that are more available or less susceptible to this kind of thing?
Everything I've seen is LED. It's all everything we're working on right now is LED, and that's been where the issue is. They're going to use cost, I'm sure, manufacturers, and say the cost is going to go up. I don't know how it's impacting the cost, they're just slowing down. So I don't know how it's impacting the cost, but they're just behind. So there will be some increases, I'm sure, to expedite product, but for the most part, it's really just been getting everybody back into the facilities and catching up with the demand.
Are some companies more susceptible to than others in terms of the companies that we get product from? Are there some companies that are larger or more innovative or use different technologies that are less susceptible to it, or is it all kind of in the same bucket?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is the larger manufacturers are the least flexible.
Right.
You know, they have everything is in place. Their machine is in place. Where you have a smaller manufacturer that maybe they're in the U.S., they're going to start sourcing components from other areas and give them the ability to be able to, to move things. Where it's tough to get the machine to change when it's a, couple $billion-dollar company that, already has raw materials in place and all these things in place. That's a little harder to change.
Do you see it? You said you see it starting to be alleviated, or is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Or
Right
are we
now,
just
what I see
we
is
don't
it's
know?
starting to get worse.
Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's starting to get worse right now. I mean, we're hoping that everybody's going back to work there. It seems like that may catch things up. Hopefully, it was a short-term problem, but I think we're going to know over the next 30 to 60 days really what the effect was.
Is there anything else that that we haven't talked about that is kind of affecting you guys right now?
I would say the confusion, right?
Right.
Products. The more messages that are out there, and the more manufacturers that put products out there, and it's the confusion, right? Everything is LED, and everything replaces everything now. And some things, when you look at it, it's really too good to be true. So,
Yeah.
I would say that's the biggest piece, and hopefully the customer has a trusted partner that they can help vet those out, because some of them are great and some of them aren't. Some of them will have, side effects. Like I say, years ago, I remember when certain LEDs came out. If it had a fan in it, I wouldn't sell it. The fan wouldn't last the 50,000 hours that the lamp was supposed to last.
Right.
But it was running too hot, so it would have a fan in it. So it's things like that the customer wouldn't really know. That hopefully they have a trusted partner that can kind of help them get through all of the fake news that's out there.
Thank you guys for your time. There's a lot here that we have gotten through, and we were able to get kind of deeper into this maybe than people even expected. But if they have any questions or anything else that they need help with, they can always reach out to us at the Wired In channels, or you can contact FSG directly at fsgi.com. There's phone numbers everywhere. Thanks, guys, for your time. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
you.
guys.